As we approach the year's end, I've been reflecting on the incredible journey we've had together in the past year. We've launched the How We Get Thru app back in March, and then we dived into meaningful conversations on this podcast, which we started back in May this year. And I'm sure you've also heard my own personal journey weaved in through all of these conversations. I've just been so grateful and excited to continue this experience of healing together with you, our fantastic community, and the driving force behind my motivation to keep showing up. As we wrap up season 1, I can't believe we're saying that, so exciting. This episode marks a temporary break until we return in February for an exciting season 2. Get ready for engaging discussions with therapists and also other healing professionals that are connected and therapy adjacent. We will also be re-releasing our initial episodes into one episode, so it'll be easier to share and listen to. And with that, with our grand season finale, we are diving into a spicy topic. Join us as we explore how to elevate your intimate life from vanilla to mint chocolate chip with all the sundae fixings, okay? Our guest today is Lauren Gibson, a couples sex therapist based in Austin and also licensed in California as well. She's going to guide us through understanding the significance of pleasure and connection in relationships. We'll discuss how societal pressures can distort our views of sex and navigate the concept of communicating with your partner about a personalized sex menu. If you are new here, you are listening to the How We Get Thru podcast, a place for you to feel connected through deep and meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Jen, a licensed therapist and founder and CEO of the How We Get Thru app, and my mission is to bring you affordable and diverse therapy resources to help you get through all the hard stuff, all in one place and at your own pace. Welcome to the How We Get Thru community. Hello and welcome back to the How We Get Thru podcast. You guys, today is a juicy episode because we have Lauren Gibson, couples therapist, who used to be Californian, but now is a Texan. So she's licensed in both states. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. It's great to be here.
Yes, it's so fun. Yeah. Lauren also made a course on the How We Get Thru app, and that's what we're going to be diving in more today about sex, intimacy, relationships, all the things. And we start every episode with a mental health myth. And so in that category, which I'm sure there's a ton,
of course,
we would love to know yours.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many myths within psychology in general, but especially when we're talking about relationships and sexual or physical relationships. I think the one that I hear the most in therapy sessions is it should just happen naturally, when in fact, like, nothing in life really does happen naturally. Like, we don't really go into a garden, throw some seeds down and say, oh, the garden will grow. We have to prepare that soil and make sure we're planting at the right time and invest time and energy into that. We start doing that in our dating relationship, so why would it be any different later on? And I don't know if it's just an assumption, but everything is changing in our life constantly, and that's just a fact. So why wouldn't we assume that our sex life should change, or the way that we pursue our sexual relationships ought to change? Because it just does. It makes it appropriate, and it makes it more loving, I think, overall. So that's one that I hear a lot of people going like, it just feels weird that I have to put effort into this, or that I was recommended to schedule sex, or that I was recommended for date nights. It feels forced. I'm like, yeah, but like, we have to take those steps of intentionality.
Yeah, the work. That's the work in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you hear that more from women or men? Or
I think, I mean, this kind of goes into like a shameless plug of the app, but like it goes into, I think, that responsive versus expressive sex drive. And so there's two types of sex drives. And we could get stereotypical with it, but I think because of a lot of factors, including just the person themselves, it's not necessarily to one gender versus the other, but more so like, how do you see yourself being sexually turned on? So like, do you just get random, moments of wanting to connect sexually or physically with your partner, or do you require more of your body to follow your head, and like it takes a little bit more work? So that's the difference of responsive versus expressive. Oftentimes women are the responsive, where it's like, I need more emotional connection to then have physical. And I'll say oftentimes, because that's loosely, especially if it's a same-sex couple or polyamorous relationship, like there's a lot of gray in that. So I want to leave room for that. But then the male partner is oftentimes the more reactive or expressive. And so they'll be more the person to initiate and go, why aren't you having this, reaction at this moment? So typically it's the male partners. However, I will say that it's not exclusive to either or.
Yes. It's interesting because, obviously, I think what you're pointing to is everybody is so unique in that as well, and that there's not maybe this like typical situation, if that makes sense. So like it is a question of like what is your type of sex drive? Can you kind of think about that more and understand that more so you feel less weird?
Yeah.
Like you feel less like, oh, this is what's happening. Because I think especially when it's two different things in a relationship, one's wanting something, the other one's not, or vice versa. And can feel really lonely, I think sometimes.
Well, and sex therapy is it feels like such a big word when you're like, oh, you're going to see a sex therapist. But being in sex therapy or providing that kind of treatment to patients, it involves so many things. And you can't just turn a blind eye to qualities like, what is your love language? Or going into Gottman therapy, like, what is your kind of reactive or horseman? Like, how do you react under stress? Do you pull away? Are you stonewalling? Are you critical? Are you defensive? How do you receive love? What are your love languages? What is any kind of trauma you experienced as a child? Like, do you have physical trauma or emotional trauma? So like, it's not just so straightforward of like, we're just going to focus on the act itself. Sex is a very emotional process, and it requires a lot of intentionality. There's a psychologist out of Canada that came in the last 10 years realizing, oh my gosh, there's such an impact that mindfulness can have in healing and also in building better neural pathways, not just in sexual relationships, but in relationships overall to challenge any kind of trauma. And so that's been an incredible nuance. And that is very intentional. Being mindful is hard. I mean, how many times have we been in sex and been like, oh, I should book that flight for our vacation.
Yes.
Or like, why am I thinking of this? Like, and then we get shameful, like to quote Brene Brown, like then we get shameful about our experience and get frustrated, like, I'm not fully present. I can't fully enjoy this. So mindfulness is absolutely opposing that myth of like, it's just going to happen naturally, like false, absolute false. So
yes. Yeah. And I'd love for you to kind of take really break down when two people get together and what happens there and then what happens over time. Again, I think to normalize.
The birds and the bees, that's what you want. No.
Well, no, like the honeymoon period. Where it's like, I can't get enough of this person. This is so amazing.
So there's like this, and I love expressing this to people because I think so many times in healthcare, there's so much fear that goes into it. And so just building understanding, sometimes when we're given a name or scientific reasoning, it gives us like hope of, okay, this is okay. I have permission to feel this. So the cortisol levels that you feel, or not cortisol, but stress, the serotonin that also you experience. Sometimes. But the serotonin and oxytocin levels that you experience early on in your relationship actually will like mimic someone who's high, like legitimately high. So when people are like, I feel so high or so bubbly, like, yeah, you do. Because like the chemical reaction you're having is similar to that. But you can only maintain that level for a few years. And then you start to dip because you are trusting and you are willing to be vulnerable. That's why you see all these funny movies, like to quote like Tina Fey and Steve Carell, or all these funny relationships rolling out in movies where people are like, the romance is dead or it's just up there. And it's like, that's not necessarily true, but you have learned now to create a deeper connection with your partner because you're going into a different level of your chemical reaction. So again, it does take intentionality. And I think that's where things get really scary or dicey for people is that they just continue to chase that high. Because now they've gone only a few years and they're like, well, it's just not there. And rather than willing to commit and do the hard work, like you were saying, we're just going to find a new area where, truthfully, I believe the grass is greener where you water it. The grass isn't greener where it might be on the other side of the fence. That's not to say if you're in an unhealthy or unsafe relationship, I definitely think you should talk to someone about that. But if we're just chasing that literal and figurative high, that's using somebody, and that's not valuing your own self-worth and the worth of someone else. So
yeah, it's interesting, like what you think love is, I guess, or like I'm just kind of thinking of the type of person that would do that, of just like, well, this is what love is, or I'm supposed to feel this all the time, or I don't know, maybe they're super passionate and want that passion all the time, but I think they would sustain that in no matter where they are.
Well, and again, that's where I think we pull in these theories of attachment theory, which focuses on like, what is a healthy attachment? What is an anxious attachment? Someone that like runs, and then someone or runs towards maybe the other partner because they're just wanting that reinforcement of like, do you love me? Are you sure you love me? But are you positive you love me? And then the avoidant person who's just like, I'm so scared of connection that maybe I'll reject myself before anyone else can. I mean, we've seen so many, like, probably real life and fictional examples of those things. And so again, that's just like part of the work that goes into this, beyond just figuring out like, well, we just need to get you on Viagra, or we just need to do like, we're completely ignoring the emotional effects, which doctors have come to acknowledge. Like, we need to do the full assessment of their emotional well-being now before getting just some pharmaceutical recommendation. And I completely stand by that.
Yeah. And also, we won't go there.
What?
I'm like, what? I just think
we're going there, Jen.
Medical, I know, but like, there's Viagra for men, but there's nothing for women. And I just think there's a whole, I think women's pleasure is like making a huge comeback.
Let's go there, Jen. No, yes.
You know?
Yeah. You and I have had this discussion before getting into this of the impacts of cultural and religious things that are said to us or told to us. And again, going into that myth of like, it's just going to happen naturally. Well, what if the natural understanding of sex or connection to you was unhealthy or frankly just wrong? Like, I mean, at least from the Christian faith, like it says to go and procreate, but then we're told nothing more. And we're told abstain from sex. And then you get married, it's like, go have babies. You're like,
right.
What? Like, it's such a like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to do this. And where do we turn to? We turn inward with shame. We turn to Google. We turn to porn. We turn to bad relationships who are going to teach us how to be loved. And that's just a horrible definition, like overall. And so I think that's an awful disservice to men and women. And it's outside the Christian faith. Just, I think it's a disservice that we're not honoring our bodies and honoring our relationships more with pride. And so at least for women have women have more nerve endings on their clitoris and other parts of their vaginal body than men do on their counterparts. And that to me is just wild, because there's such a focus on men and stimulation between blowjobs or handjobs or whatever, of oral sex or other toys. But there's this different perception that comes when it is related to women. And if we thought about sex, and this was one of the questions, again, app of like, how do you define pleasure? And if you define pleasure as connecting with your partner, then that restructures everything. Like, it's not just about sex, it's about connection. And so that is a pivotal point in relationships that I have with my patients, where they go, oh, it could be more. It could change. We have permission to change. And it doesn't have to just be natural. It can be intentional, and it can be intentional based on what I and my partner want. And we have permission now to vocalize that. And so things like the sex menu, which are included in the workbook, so that giving you that platform to have these conversations with or without a therapist to go, yes, no, maybe I might be interested in this, and why, with your partner, rather than just, I mean, how many times, we're not going to get too personal with you, Jen, but like how many times between our relationships
Yes.
you can plan it out. You're like, I know what we're doing, when we're doing it, how we're doing it, and we're done.
Yep.
And and sometimes you want something different, but you don't really know how to ask that, and you don't really know how to bring it up. So that's part of the work that I do too, is like, your body has changed, your needs have changed.
Yeah.
Especially after children, like, there's so much. There's so much. And environmentally, physically, emotionally. And no one likes to just read between the lines. So like giving permission to talk about it openly, clearly, and respectfully. So
yeah, I'm kind of going back to the harmful part about women's pleasure and how it was taught for the men as well. Because again, if you have the perspective that sex is for male pleasure, or I heard somewhere in a podcast too, I have to give my partner pleasure.
Yes.
And that's more about them than actually about her, right? Like, I'm a good partner if I can do this, or if I can achieve it, or if I can like crack the code.
Yeah.
So again, the positioning is less around your partner's pleasure and more about how do I... Yeah.
It's totally performance. And it's like, you are only as good as the result, which... how many of us have struggled with perfectionism? And then it builds this like weird responsibility on the other partner to be like baking it or giving feedback. And it's like, well, if I give bad feedback, that's going to hurt their feelings, because then what does that mean? So it just builds this cycle of like unreliable or disconnected sexual experiences. And when I say sex, I should say that bigger. When I say sex, I just mean connection physically and romantically, because I'm not just talking about intercourse. I'm talking about just enjoying each other and connecting physically. And so I think it's harmful and does just such a disservice. Men have, especially, there's almost like a lack of information. Like, it's a different shift. Like, men are told what they should do, women are told what they shouldn't do.
Right.
And if they oppose those things, then they're odd. They're odd ducks.
Right.
And there are so many men that I'm so grateful have come into my office and sat on my couch and go, I don't know what's happening to me, but I must just be the only one. And that's so not true. And they don't even know how to necessarily bring up their partners. And so just having those discussions, and it does not always end in Viagra either. Like, because they're like, I can't take Viagra because of another medical condition, or I don't want to.
Yeah.
And they've been able to overcome that with emotional processing and therapy and talking about trauma or talking about things openly with their partner. Because how awkward is it to talk about something in real time versus to talk about it beforehand? So, I think it's unfair to both male and female. Absolutely.
Yeah. I remember I heard Glennon Doyle. I don't know if you listen to her podcast.
Love Glennon Doyle.
Yeah.
I love Glennon Doyle.
Her and Abby.
I know Glennon Doyle.
I know. But I think Abby, that was like the first time they're like intimate with each other. And Abby was like, what are those noises you are making? What are those noises you're making? And she's like, well, what do you mean? You know, but it came from this performative place.
Yes.
And when you have a partner that can kind of call you out on that, of like, I'm going to be vulnerable with you, because I actually want you to enjoy this moment and enjoy being with me. I don't want you to pretend to enjoy it. I
had this conversation with a couple, and they were discussing the concept of like, one of the partners realized how much they were providing feedback unintentionally from their own anxiety of wanting to be okay or accepted. Because when they masturbated, they realized, I am content. I am coming to completion. I am okay. And I am making no noises. I am making I am not a very reactive person, but when I'm in bed, I am doing all the work. It is Circus Olay. And not to say that like there was a part of like, I enjoy this because I'm connecting with this person, but I realize I'm overcompensating for the sake of like being accepted, which can go into, again, like so many personality types of like, this person might struggle with people pleasing. This person might struggle with feeling like they have to be defensive under criticism or different concepts. So it's like, this sex is not isolated. It is the way you act physically connecting with someone is attached to so many other areas of your life. And so when someone says they're struggling sexually, I want to evaluate, okay, what else is going on in your life? Because more than likely, it's not just this one component, just as much as that could apply to other areas. And so, but I think we consider sex on this like lonely island off in the Pacific that we just think like, we don't go there until we're married, and then, or we don't do anything until we're in a committed relationship or until we're mature or until we want to have kids. And then we visit that place. And that's just not true. We start puberty now. I just heard puberty is getting younger. It's like the age of 9 is what people are saying for women. Yeah. And men are like around 10-ish. And that is wild. And then people are assuming like, we don't need to talk about this. And they'll like, yes, we need to talk about it. We need to make people like empowered and confident in their body, especially as young adults. And that goes to my fellow therapists who work with adolescents. And so, you know, making sure, especially with all these things going on governmentally and just empowering people in their body. So I don't think it's this lonely island. I think it's very much intertwined in a busy city with many other factors of our normal day life.
Would you say that if a couple isn't having sex, then that feels like a flag raised?
I'm gonna be curious as to why. I mean, like I think any therapist should. I always think it's very interesting that with my colleagues, they'll ask when you start talking about sex in your couples therapy, like session 1, like because here's the thing, we don't want to make it taboo. Like we don't want to make anything. It's you are coming into therapy. I am privileged that I am the space that you are willing to talk about these things. And if I'm not willing to talk about them, then no one's probably going to be talking about it. And so I try to have those conversations openly so that I can model how can we have conversations about this that are awkward, because probably the ways that they've been modeled up until my opportunity to enter someone's life is that it's been shameful, it's been weird, it's been just uncomfortable, and you don't know how to bring it up to your partner. So just even having like a collaborative conversation, I encourage patients to talk about their bodies or their experience factual. So like, this didn't feel good for my body. Like just talking rather than going into you statements, which goes back to like healthy communication. Like, I feel loved when you touch my lower back and hold me close. I would appreciate if you do that more. Like just very simple and practicing those things. To reference Glennon, she even talked about the intervention of like having a phrase and returning to that phrase like occasionally. And practicing it in session, which I have done, and people get very uncomfortable with. And it could be for the sake of affirming your partner's positive touch if you've especially experienced trauma. So giving them closure of saying, yeah, that feels good. And how simple that phrase can be, but how powerful it can be also to your partner. And so things like that are things that are discussed in therapy also. But it's a very big kind of unraveling process, I guess, of figuring out. And your original question now, I realize I'm deviating, is about, does it raise a flag? It makes me question what else is going on, because if sex is typically a reaction to wanting connection, how else are you connecting? So when I'm working with couples, some of the couples I have the privilege of walking with is that they're having babies. They're like they're growing their family. Man, I mean, Jenna, you have 2 kids?
Don't touch me.
You have 2 kids, right? I got 2 kids. Ooh, how long did you carry? I carried 41 weeks. Do not touch me. The only part that I want to touch is my ankles, please, and nothing above. So so I respect that also, but that implies, how are you feeling emotionally? Like emotionally, how are you feeling? Well, maybe they're feeling guilt because they're not having sex. Maybe they're feeling anxiety about this upcoming change. Okay, so how can we emotionally connect in that way? And again, sex isn't just intercourse. So like, maybe we can commit to holding hands. Maybe we can commit to back massages, some way that you feel still emotional or physically connected beyond just intercourse. And I think that that's women especially will have this concept of like, well, he just wants to, or I'm jumping to heterosexual relationships here, but he just wants to have sex with me. He just wants to use me. And I think that that going back to your conversation of like the way men have been taught about sex, I find a lot of men don't want that. They want to connect with their partner. They really want to. They find that connection most frequently when they're able to physically connect in like kind of some kind of physical sexual intercourse. But is it isolated to that? No. And women have been told for so long, your body is just going to be used. Keep it to yourself. Don't do anything, which is really suppressing and really harmful overall. Like, there are so many women that I talk to who don't use lube, who don't, like, what? Yeah, they don't use lube. They don't understand how their body has changed after having a child, because how many appointments did we get for our children? Like,
one. Yeah. One for us at the end of it.
One for postpartum. Yeah. And you know what's wild is that I was reading the National Health Alliance. It like hurts just to say this. There's one in like, I think it was 1 in 15 or 19 women who will commit suicide in postpartum. And it is between 9 to 12 months that it most frequently happens.
Wow.
Which is wild, because here's the thing, Jen, is when does that postpartum checkup happen? It's 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks.
So it's not even remotely caught by any professional, and you don't go back to the OB until your next pap smear or until you're pregnant again. So you have no surveillance under your watch. So it is up to the pediatrician of your child, and you're not even the patient.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a disservice. It is like, it irks me so deeply that is something that is lacking support of family, of family healthcare. And so for any woman to just not understand and to go inward and shameful for a multitude of reasons, but like, women will come into my office and say, I don't know why I'm so dry. I don't know why my sex drive is so low. I don't know why I don't like to be touched. I don't know why I'm so irritable right now. And there is scientific reasoning. It's just not being provided. And I hate that it takes such a turmoil on patients to come to that final understanding. I'm so grateful when I get to go, here you go. Here's the knowledge. Please go buy lube.
Yes.
Love your body, please. So,
yes. Yeah.
Like, there,
but I think
doesn't happen.
Yeah. There's so much pressure to bounce back or be okay, or, even the postpartum period is 2 years. 2 years, right? But we are just like, well, this baby's out and we have to do this and we got to do that. And there's just so much pressure, I think. And I think when it comes to sex, or if there's issues with sex or a body, or if you're sex drive, or if you don't want it, then it can be really shamey. It can feel really lonely and isolating, and that something's wrong with you.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many myths when it comes up for this topic. But the other one is like, this isn't normal. And I'm like, oh, this is anything but abnormal. Like, and long-term committed couples never experiencing any kind of stimulation. Not that you need to, but not having any kind of sex toy, any lube, anything in their, nightstand or whatever. And I'm like, have fun. Like, reintegrate fun into your relationship. Have discussion. Hopefully, this is your best friend. This is someone that you can be vulnerable with. And you want to, when you took your vows, if you are married, if you're not, so be it. But like, if you were married, you said, for better or worse, till death we part, we're going to grow all together. Like, let's grow together. Not just get to the end line, but like, let's grow together. Let's figure out how to do this well. But I remember, yes, once upon a time, I lived in California. I'm a Texas transplant, and I lived in the lovely city of Los Angeles. And I was hosting a bachelorette for a friend. Now, my husband and I were like, let's go get some fun Peanuts toys at a, store for our dear friend, just to embarrass her. And Jen, I was married and I felt shame and uncomfortable and so many things because the way we project sex is that it is just like, this is just for the result of penetration, nothing. It's very lacking emotion, and kind of silly. And like, it was not turning on anything for me. And so I empathize with that. I understand that. Like, why would I go invest in these things in my relationship if they just model being used? And I totally understand that. I think that's where the beauty of like online shopping comes in, especially because I can encourage patients to go home, look it up online in the comfort of your home when your children are asleep, and talk about why wouldn't you like this or why would you like this? And I love that for patients because then there's no pressure and they're doing it from the comfort of their home and it's shipped directly to them.
Yes.
Do a drive-up order for all I care.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was not the case many years ago. And I can understand that for some couples of like their understanding of investing in their relationship sexually means already being vulnerable with a stranger and going to a place where they don't feel in control. And if they already struggle with anxiety sexually or just environmentally, that's going to be really uncomfortable. So that's a whole nutshell in itself over there. But
when would you suggest somebody, I mean, if they're coming into your office and they're like, we don't have sex and all these things and you're, doing all the things, when do you suggest doing sex toys? Or what is is it just the fun? Is it the excitement? Is it the play, like introducing play again?
No, I think so. If they're not having sex again, I'm going to first ask a lot of questions as to why. And I'm trained therapist as well. So I'll typically do a session together and then a session individually just to further assess what's going on. Because so many times we care deeply for our partner and we want to shield them from any of our own pain that we're going through. So I take those sessions very seriously to rule out what's going on and how can I support where you're at right now and not projecting my own suggestions onto you. So remaining really curious about that and really safe. I don't think that the outcome of a healthy relationship is found through having a lot of sex. I don't think that having a lot of sex doesn't mean that you're having a healthy relationship, because to go back to like people with chronic pain or diagnoses that are just difficult, or pregnancy or different things that cause you to kind of pull back and address your own physical needs first before wanting to connect physically with somebody else. It's not that they're not connected. It's just that there's something else going on that's causing, a greater need of attention and care at that time. Yeah. So I definitely don't think that ought to be the result of couples therapy or, we're having a lot of sex, that means that we're in a good relationship. Definitely not. There's people who have a lot of sex that aren't in healthy relationships. So if someone comes in, they're saying we're not having a lot of sex, i.e. they just had a baby and they're not having a lot of sex. And I mean, let's be real. So that doesn't immediately make me go like, oh my gosh, there's red flags everywhere. It's more of like, okay, what's going on emotionally? How are you guys both individually coping with this big life adjustment? And how can we build empathy and companionship and support around that to where you're willing to be vulnerable above and beyond? And then remain curious about, again, like what does feel good to you? Because you may have never even talked about this with your partner to begin with. Maybe you just started dating and you had sex and you're like, oh my gosh, it's super hot and this is awesome. Yeah. And then like things went by and you're like, this isn't as hot anymore. But I don't really know how to bring it up. Like I'm not really lukewarm. This is not as great as it used to be. Interesting. But now you don't really know how to bring it up because it's so hyper fixated. You only have sex once every other week or once in a blue moon. So by me criticizing it, well, shoot, like I'm the bad guy. So there's so many reasons why people will just stay in that loophole. But no, I don't think frequency means healthiness of relationship at all.
How, Lauren, I would love to know, I mean, you don't have to tell everything, but your personal journey of becoming a sex therapist and how that has really, like, what shifted in you? What were you seeing that was like, oh, I have to do something about this?
Right. Well, I mean, we went to grad school, and I say we, you and I went to grad school, and we went into that experience just kind of soaking it all up like a sponge. And people ask, what are you going to work with? What are you going to do? And you have a expectation. And I knew I wanted to partner with people. And I went into that having a lot of experience in play therapy and child psychology, and then had the opportunity to work in a hospital, and it was great. It was a really great experience and really eye-opening for a lot of reasons. And then about halfway through my hospital time, I got pregnant, which was super exciting. And I had a baby boy in September 2019. He's awesome. And went on maternity leave. And I remember coming back, and it was the weekend before coming back, and we were at the farmer's market, and somebody had some Clorox wipes out, making a joke of like, it's for this virus. Watch out.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And I came, that thing. Yeah, that thing. And I came back.
So I'm like, where are we? Yeah.
No, I came back to the hospital, and they handed me a hazmat, and they were like, welcome back. We missed you. Get to work. And I was like, okay, cool. Where am I going to pump? And they're like, you can go in the closet. And I say that laughingly, but like legitimately it was a closet. And it was so bad. It was so bad. So I'm like standing there. I remember having this vivid moment of standing there, helping with the hazmat gear on, and was just like, this isn't okay. Like, this isn't okay.
No,
and the expectation was my question was, when will it be okay? Like, how long until it will be okay again? And I went to my doctors, and they gave me a thumbs up. They're like, congrats, you can have sex again. And I was like, that's not really what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
But thank you. And I went about for months still feeling like I was very unprepared for this. And went back into my doctor and was like, I feel no sex drive. And I don't feel a lot of anything right now. And they're like, oh yeah, that's because you're bonding. Like, this is what's happening to your, like, chemically. I'm like, when did I miss this in the labor and delivery course? Like, when was this going to be talked about? And I remember such a relief of like, oh my God, I'm not weird. I'm not a weirdo. Like, other people have this. And it felt like such a relief of like, oh, because you're breastfeeding, because you're doing these things, your body is designed in such a way that this is actually okay. This is going the way it's expected to. And I was like, whose expectation? Because it's not mine. And so I went forward and was going through my postpartum. And then I started to see, come April, May of 2020, this incredible increase of postpartum individuals coming into an inpatient psychiatric setting. And the hospital was like, who do we have that is a therapist with experienced anxiety and depression? Oh my gosh, it's Lauren. And so I had this opportunity, not asking, but opportunity with both men and women, because men have postpartum depression as well and adjustment disorder, to sit down and really get raw about this experience of transition for them that I did not have planned, which often happens in healthcare.
Yes.
And felt like, wow, we need to do more, because a lot of these people were on 5150 colds, meaning they're at harm to themselves or another person. And that to me was like, that was unacceptable. Not of what they were doing, but it was unacceptable being a part of, calling myself a part of the healthcare field and knowing that I have opportunity to do more with my degree that could actually save lives and impact relationships and heal generational trauma or prevent generational trauma. So I need to do more. And so in that time period as well, my husband and I decided we were going to move to Austin, Texas, and we prepared those opportunities. And I invested in further CEUs and trainings and mentorships. I became a Gottman 3-level trained therapist. So just really investing in, how can I do more for this like, it's not going away. People aren't going to stop having families. And I have this also, foundational understanding of child psychology. So being able to also partner with people to understand, like, I understand your stressor as an adult, and I understand this Tasmanian devil that you're raising as a child, and and being able to support the whole family. And I'm so, so grateful. Like, I'm so passionate about it, and really love just building so much more confidence into couples and their families, that like, this is a really beautiful and also slightly chaotic chapter in the small years, but it is a redefining and really adventurous time in your relationship to look forward and say, what do we want next? It's a really cool position from my side of the couch to watch families grow. And I really like it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yes.
Have you seen, I mean, obviously that year in 2020, there was like an influx. Have you seen more couples come to therapy since 2020? Do you feel like people are...
Yeah, I mean, I think I have seen just it, like you said, it takes about 2 years to really feel stabilized in your hormone levels as a woman, and financially, and different kinds of things of those aspects, because there's so many things that come with growing your family. And so even couples that have, it's not even necessarily just couples coming straight into the postpartum period of like, I have a 4-month-old, which does happen, but it's also people that have a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old because they didn't get the treatment, and then they had a baby in 2020, and they created these new neuropathways, which neuropathways are kind of like a toll road, if you will. I mean, we have toll roads in Texas, and I know they're in California, but it's a toll road. It's a fast speed, like kind of one stop, point A to point B, a few stops along the way. But we know this like primal, like, oh, you have, you touch me, I react this way, and then this happens. And we've created this new neural pathway over so many times and experiences in isolation with no like contrast, because there were like 2 years of that. And we didn't build community, we didn't build support. And so it just primed us more and more and more to build these negative cognitive distortions, or these negative reactions or habits in our relationships, or these parenting skills where parents will sit on the couch and be like, I didn't want to be this person. I don't know how I got here. And the same could apply to many other facets of someone's life. But it's not always the like first time parent, 3 months. Like sometimes it's, I didn't have the opportunity to do this. Maybe financially I didn't have the opportunity or time, or our relationship wasn't stable enough. My partner wasn't accepting enough towards this position. Or the real thing I love doing is challenging what therapy is. Because some people have a horrible experience in healthcare. I've had horrible experiences in healthcare.
Same.
And they won't come back because of one experience. And so me coming in and saying, what was your experience like before when you not want? And I'm going to make a commitment to stand by you and support you.
I think a lot of the listeners are parents with younger-ish children. That's not like everybody, but I think that, you know, in our world and with our friends and everything, like there's always a point in a relationship where you're like, whoa, what just happened? Or like, hey, where are we? And so I think even to normalize that, especially after children or whenever you're done having children, quote unquote, there's like a reshuffling, a resettling. Hey, who are you now? Right? And who am I now? And how do I express that to you? How do I be vulnerable? How do you see me? How do I see you? Again, I think that connection, and then sex becomes this part of that and not the thing. But I'm different and I would like this, this, and this now. Or let's try this, this, and that. But it's having that conversation, which I think most people don't, because it's really scary.
No, they don't feel connected to themselves
Yeah.
Because they've been so attuned or aligned to these other aspects of their life. And that is, inclusive of their career, their relationship, their children, their parents, if they have aging parents they're taking care of, like all kinds of things. And then
generation.
they look at themselves and are like, I don't know this person. Like, cue law of reflection. Like, who is this girl? Where is she? Like, what? Is this girl that used to go to the club? Like, I want to be in bed by 8 with Netflix and chilling in every opposite faction. Like, no.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think if you're not connected to yourself, if you are, disassociating, which goes back to mindfulness, if you are disassociating from your own physical experience and not practicing mindfulness individually, then you will not be able to really give 100% in your relationship. And again, this isn't just like sex being isolated. I would guarantee that this is being played out in other areas of your life, and that other people would root for you to invest in this skill even more, like in your career, in your parenting skills, in your friendships. Like, these habits aren't just like, well, we just apply that to that aspect of our life. Like, how powerful would it be if we began practicing open communication in our parenting skills? As saying, I didn't like that. It hurt my feelings when you screamed at me. I need to go take a break for a minute to calm down.
Yeah.
Practicing mindfulness openly, like modeling it for your children. Like, those are things that would be super powerful. Like, oh my gosh, what kind of generation would be raised? They say had assertive kind, like mindful communication, but that doesn't just magically happen through Bluey or our school teachers or whatever, which I love Bluey. I love me some good
so
Bluey
good.
and bingo. And I
know.
love my kids' school teachers, but
yeah,
there's such an impact of family of origin that is at play. And so much of our own family of origin that influences us, and that we have the opportunity of changing in our lives, like in our children's lives. So yeah.
And with that, I wanted to ask, like, are there 3 tips that someone can do if they're feeling, I mean, we talked a little bit about mindfulness too, but if they're feeling either they want to spice it up in the bedroom or they're worried about sex, the sex is the first thing that's going to kind of get them into other things. But are there 3 tips that you could give?
Yeah.
Or start?
I would say get comfortable first talking about sex with yourself. Like, not just talking to me, but like actually talking about with yourself of like, I love my body, or I love my eyes, or I loved the way that it felt when they touched me. Or even giving a positive affirmation, which is something I've worked on with some of my patients who struggle with trauma, is like, my body feels good when this happens, or this is okay. I'm safe. Like little things, being able to talk to yourself and really appreciate, again, kind of going to mindfulness, but appreciating like, this is a good thing. Like, loving my body, being loved is okay. Like, you don't have to have permission to receive love. And it's just being comfortable about talking about that and acknowledging like what did feel good and what didn't. You have permission also to say that did not feel good. Like, consent does not end.
That was a bummer. Yeah.
Consent doesn't end when we're just, we got married. Like, so it's fine. Like, consent is continual. So being okay, also saying that does not feel good for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe it feels okay one time versus the other, but working that out for yourself of like, how am I communicating with my body and making it know, like, I'm not just going to push through this. I'm going to really acknowledge and honor my body, because I guarantee if you're in a loving, committed relationship, that's probably what your partner wants too. So giving them that space to know, hey, this is actually what I prefer, or how I best receive love. They'd be like, sign me up. Like, I would be all for that. So The second one that I would say is maybe getting to the habit of giving your partner attraction-based compliments. So like, I really appreciate when you do this thing. That's an action versus saying like, wow, your eyes look so good today. Like giving a physical attraction. It can be action-based, but there is something of like connection physically that doesn't always have to be touch. And working with couples, we have a lot of our population is kind of intermixed here because I'm in Georgetown, Texas, and Killeen is just a hop and jump away from us. And there is a big Army base there. And so we have a lot of military families who will travel or get deployed or be gone for long periods of time. Or we have couples who are in healthcare and maybe their partner is on an overnight shift or they're a firefighter. Or, this is transferable to a lot of places, but like sometimes you don't have the luxury of being in the same space. Right. And so getting into the habit of like, how can I compliment who you are and how you are growing as a person externally just as much as I maybe do internally, and kind of maybe checking yourself like, how much am I doing that? And how powerful it would be to also receive that, to be like, thank you. Because maybe it would help a little with that disassociating that you're experiencing too. And then consider utilizing the sex menu would probably be my next one, which is in the workbook.
Describe the sex menu. Like, so, what is it?
The sex menu is an opportunity to kind of go through different acts that might be included in physically connecting with your partner. So it goes from everything from the most like junior high-ish holding hands to massaging to making out with tongue, oral sex, different kinds of toys. And it also talks about like receiving versus giving, because sometimes it could be more willing to receive it and a little bit more anxiety provoking to take that action of initiating it. And really I wanted to act as, and this is not something that I made up at all. This is many moons ago, another psychologist made this, but it's really powerful because it's supposed to be a launch pad for further discussion. And so it's laid out in these different categories, and it's yes, no, maybe column, and you sit down with your partner or with your therapist there if you would like a kind of third person to help facilitate this, especially if you feel a little uncomfortable. And it's the opportunity for you to go, yes, I'm definitely okay with like holding your hand. No, I'm not really okay with that position. It just makes me feel really disconnected from you because maybe I can't see you or it hurts my body in a certain way. Maybe I would be open to trying that. I haven't really thought about it, but I'm not closed off from it. But these are my conditions. Or this is what makes me still a little bit leaning towards no and not 100% yes. So it's really just, it's supposed to act as an act of reconvening, like huddling up. So I use this analogy all the time with my patients, especially in intake, which is just for people who haven't gone to therapy before. It's our first session that we have with a patient. And it's usually when people are most nervous about coming to therapy. Yes. And which, granted, I'm a stranger. That would make absolute sense. I'm going to get all the negative and all the good and bad and ugly. So it totally makes sense. But I give this analogy of like, this is our locker room. Like, especially for my men, women too, but especially for my men who are going through their fantasy football leagues right now. And my women who are Travis Kelce fans, aka Taylor Swift fans. Like, this or that. But like, this is our locker room. We have 1 hour once a week, sometimes less, sometimes it's bi-weekly, sometimes it's monthly, to really understand what's working well, what's not, what has worked well in the past, what hasn't worked well in the past, so that you guys can go out and score hypothetical touchdowns. And we will also reconvene for other, locker room moments in the future. And we will talk about the fumbles. We will talk about the interceptions. We will talk about the terrible tackles and all the bad things too, but with the hope and with the goal ultimately of having a touchdown and having that victory and praising that. Like, oh my goodness, have you seen these NFL boys? Like, they are dancing away.
I love it.
And I love doing, not literally, but I love having that opportunity to praise our patients, because how often are we praised in our relationships. Oftentimes we just assume therapy is when we come in and we get told what we should do and what we're doing badly. So I love the opportunity to say, like, good job. Like, good, even if it didn't go perfectly, even if it was a blowout game or whatever, like, you did a great job. And so I try to use therapy as, like, we're having this locker room moment, and then you're going to go out and have the opportunity to play it on the field and see how it goes. It might not go what you expect, and that's the beauty of the game. But I'm here, and I'll be here, and you can call a timeout. Yeah. Maybe we need to have a therapy session before we thought or whatever, but I'll be here. Yeah. I'm wearing the jersey, and, like, I'll be here. I'll sit next to Taylor Swift in the box, but but that's also kind of what the sex menu is for, is like, I want this to be an opportunity for us to take a quick break and go, like, is this working well? Like, is the things that you're doing in your sexual life together really connecting? And are you craving deeper connection when you're having physical intimacy? And if so, how can we get there? Like, and how can we do that in a way that's honoring towards both of you emotionally and physically? Because it's not a copy and paste. And if it was, that would be terrible, because you guys are so amazing and unique, and that's what makes this relationship so good. And so that's the hope of the sex menu, is just to start bringing awareness to, like, the initial myth of, like, it happens naturally. It absolutely doesn't. Yeah. And everything's changing, and we have to learn to change with it and pivot and figure out what tactics we can do to really get those touchdown moments in our relationships. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Lauren, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is so good. Okay, where can people find you? We have a course on the How We Get Thru app. It hasn't come out yet. It will be, I think, at the end of December.
Yeah, I think he said 21st or something of that sort.
Yes. That's when it will be live on the app. That's why. But it's everything and more of what we just talked about, so you can deep dive there. It's 30 minutes. It's easy. That we have the sex menu there as well. But Lauren, if somebody is in California or Texas and they want to work with you, where can they find you?
They can find me online. I'll have opportunity for finding our website online, but I have a Instagram, or you can contact my office directly, or you can shoot me an email at lauren@gtonecounseling.com. And yes, I'm licensed in California and Texas, virtually. Happy to meet with anyone in those states, or you can meet at my office in Georgetown, Texas, which is just a hop away from Austin or Waco, depending on where you're at. So yeah, that's all about me.
Yay. And I'll put all of that in the show notes as well, so people can just click.
Cool. Yeah, because I really don't
Lauren.
know.
I know.
That's one thing I'm
on the internet.
I'm there. I'm somewhere out there in the world.
Oh my gosh, so good. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Yeah.
You are the best. And here's to cheersing everybody to have a better sex life.
Yeah, let's go.
And relationship.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks. You guys, that is it for season 1 of the How We Get Thru podcast. Wow, what a year. What a great start to something expansive, healing, and wonderful. I am unbelievably grateful and thankful for your heart, your time, your space that you have given this platform. And I am so excited to keep growing with you in 2024. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next year.